Hey, listen up. Yeah, we here and we locked in. Let's keep it going all the way to the top 10. We fear the turtles, so it's no other option. Fred and Ryan, just watch them. Let's take it to the max. It's the Shell and Tell. They come with all the facts. It's the Shell and Tell. Let's take it to the max. It's the Shell and Tell. They come with all the facts. It's the Shell and Tell.
Welcome back to another episode of ShellnTell. I got the score exactly right and the winner exactly wrong.
Yeah, it was a tough day, tough few days for Maryland, for DMV sports fans. Obviously, basketball falling on Friday night to Marquette, 78-74, and football laid an egg the next day against Rutgers, which the calls have grown even louder since then.
Yeah, it's a hard pill to swallow. This is still not as bad a loss as Northwestern is, but now you've ran out of times to make it up. Now there's this complete season is a loss. There's really no way to spin it other than we were promised something we didn't get, and we were all dumb enough to buy it. And I don't know what I expect from Locks, because you can't sit up there and be like, guys, we're just not good enough this year. We don't have an offensive line, and it's just not going to be great. But also, how do I ever believe the hype again? It's just really difficult to hear we're going to compete for championships when we barely competed with out-of-conference foes. Our best wins are Virginia and USC, who have also beat nobody, are also 500 teams, and we've lost to absolute scum of the earth in Northwestern. I don't understand. It's impossible to be happy.
And I think I think obviously the Northwestern game, the Michigan State game, that was another obviously disappointing game. But again, against Rutgers, in my mind, and I don't even think it's a hot take. Rutgers was clearly the better team, and I think it kind of showed for 4 quarters. And again, I think just kind of the execution, the same kind of issues. I mean, on offense, a lot of missed opportunities. Loxley talked about it as one of the first things. I believe it was the second sentence he said, a lot of plays that were missed out there. Defensively, a lot of missed tackles. So it just kind of felt like really in all phases of the game, Maryland just kind of really fell apart, and kind of similar to Northwestern, in the I believe it was the first couple of minutes of the fourth quarter against Northwestern, similar in the second half against Rutgers, it kind of felt like, the effort at times, that effort level dropped a little bit. And I think that's kind of the disappointing thing. And, you mentioned obviously running out opportunities. Loxley talked about, this is, 3 1-week playoffs essentially for Maryland to be able to continue their season, obviously to continue the bowl eligibility, bowl win streak. And yeah, like you said, going against an Iowa team that has arguably maybe as good of a running back as Kama Nungai and Caleb Johnson coming in, and then going at Penn State, team, 9-1 so far, and their only blemish is that Ohio State game. Yeah, it's a tall
We're
test.
not Ohio State.
Yeah, and I think this weekend, obviously especially with some key recruits, Manny Iheanacho from Georgetown Prep. He was back on campus, 3rd visit of the year. Hakeem Satterwhite, this was his first visit, 4-star out of St. John's. Kari Adams, another 4-star as Notre Dame, Penn State, a lot of blue bloods after him. All those guys were on campus. So I think, this weekend, what is a chance to kind of, just right the ship and kind of generate some positive momentum again. And just kind of feels like every opportunity that Maryland gets this season, they have blown it away.
Yeah, they squandered it. I mean, part of the problem too now is this is not a bad team in different position groups. I think our running backs are above average. I think our wide receivers are nearly great for our standards. I think that our linebacker core are awfully solid, if not good to great. Defensive line,
Safeties, yeah.
Defensive line has been not what we were promised, but still better than years in the past. And yet we're still, because we have no cornerbacks and we have no offensive line, just completely unable to compete. These two groups of just the game is speeding up for Billy late in a season where he's a starter. Like against Oregon and this team, he looked rushed. He looked hurried. His throws are high. His throws are, are not accurate. He's running, running more. But of course he is. He's gotten destroyed every week. He's not Talia, who's a tiny little frame who is walking off injured every game. But these hits add up. He's getting crushed on a weekly basis. So of course his clock's speeding up. And the statistic, I think it was like 2.1 seconds or something that he has, in the pocket. Like, no wonder he can't get the job done. But even with that, our wide receivers are so good, they were still open, wide open. Ty Felton for a touchdown the very first drive, and he airballs it a little bit. Then off the hands of Prather, which was underthrown, but that should probably been caught also. Like there was a lot of blame to go around early in that game. The defense was doing their job early. The offense didn't. And we could have really buried that team if we could have just even played the offense we had in the second half early while our defense was still hot. Because by the second half, Rutgers didn't care because they were scoring every time we scored, and they had already buried us.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned it there, right there. Obviously, with Billy just kind of taking some big hits, especially kind of really throughout the game. I thought there were a couple plays where it looked a little bit questionable as to whether or not it could have been a late hit against that Rutgers defense there. But obviously the offensive line for Maryland it's continued to be a sore spot, arguably. Really 1A, 1B with the biggest question coming into the season with, quarterback and obviously the cornerback room, having their moments as well. And I think, speaking of the cornerback room, I thought it was a little bit disappointing. Obviously, Rutgers, Kyle Monangai, you kind of knew what to expect, and he finished the day with 2 touchdowns to kind of cement the game there. But Rutgers kind of made it pretty clear with Ethan thrown for 238 yards, 67% completion percentage. Rutgers did a pretty good job kind of abusing Maryland, and Maryland just, seemed like they were pretty adamant and sticking with their man coverage. Kevis Thomas had a little bit of a rough day, but again, I thought that the cornerback room, after a little bit of a confident performance against Oregon on the road 1 week prior, I thought they kind of took a step back.
They had a good first half, but then they just fell apart. I mean, it wasn't a lights out first half by any means, but they did enough that they shouldn't have been in the position they were in the second half. They were gassed, and the running back started showing up because early the defensive line had the running back kind of bottled up, but it wore them down. There was no defense left at the end of that game. Again, on that defensive line, even that, King Basodes had a very good year, but what happened with Phillips? Like, they were hyping him like the next, great thing. He's had a couple good plays throughout the year. Don't get me wrong. I would still be very upset to hear him leaving, or anything. Like, it's a solid piece for that defensive line, but they were a little early on those hype pieces. Maybe those should have been for next year.
Yeah, I think, obviously, he was a guy, coming into this year. I mean, there was no one similar to, if you ask, who the best guy on the team, everyone said Nolan Ray. And, you ask who the guy who's the hardest worker, guy's always kind of staying in the weight room, film, just finding ways to get better. It was definitely Jordan Phillips is kind of, that man child coming into the second year. So, he had a one play, I think it was 1 tackle for loss on Saturday. And,
and he shedded his blocker immediately, and he was in the backfield. Like, he has moments. It's just like almost feel like a King Basode was overlooked, because he was clearly the best one on the defensive line this year.
Yeah, no, and he's kind of been banged up a little bit, kind of going into this week. Went down twice in the loss against Oregon, so obviously good to get him back. But yeah, when you talk about next year, that defensive line, obviously losing King Basote, losing Tyzay Johnson, losing Quayshawn Fuller from a defensive line that kind of flashed, but like you said, I agree.
It was good enough. It wasn't a strength, but it was good enough.
Yeah, and it was kind of viewed really as a potential strength. Really, with you had 3 seniors and Jordan Phillips kind of leading the way. That's kind of the expectation. So obviously, it will be a big need for Brian Williams this offseason.
Yeah, it's just kind of scary because we're seeing that the pieces that matter most are what we've had the most difficulty bringing in. The offensive line, the guys that you can't just get a one-off to fix. You know what I mean? Like, you can get one random high 4-star to come from a wide receiver position. It completely changes your offense. One 5-star left tackle doesn't change your offense. Like, you need dudes, so many at the same time. You need at least 3 guys that are working in, together, or they'll just run away from your good players. And just kind of sucks for the future. It sucks to realize that, like, we need a lot more help. We need a lot more help out of the portal. I mean, you've talked about, we got guys growing, and as long as they all stick around, like, it will be better depth wise than we've had. But it's just to compete on that level, I think we're gonna need more money. We're gonna need more, coaches with more stats, and like history in that world, but we don't have it.
Yeah, and obviously, you mentioned, being able to, just get a receiver. I mean, I've been, Ty Felton, speaking of just kind of the Rutgers game. I mean, he got obviously a record breaking day, and, being able to set the single season record on his first catch, 17-yard catch, broke the single season record held by DJ Moore with his 81st catch, then became the 4th wideout to record 1,000 receiving yards. So again, and I kind of posted this for subscribers, but Caden Prather has gotten a lot of feedback. Is again, his production might not be high end, but a lot of folks have kind of pointed at him as being arguably as impressive, if not probably the more polished NFL prospect between the two. But I think obviously you get a chance to be able to get that kind of consistent production at the position, and kind of just looking ahead at next year. Obviously, Octavian Smith has been able to flash a little bit at times this year. Didn't do too much this past week. Obviously had one deflection that led to the interception there, as well as Oregon. But again, being able to find probably at least one, probably 2 guys to kind of round out that room is probably focus for the offense next year.
Yeah, I mean, Octavian Smith had a couple flashy first downs late. He looks, he's high effort, high ability type player, and I do hope that he's another one that we see stick around and grow with this squad. But that's the thing, is like, nothing's going to make me feel better until at first National Signing Day and we get the people that were promised. And then after that, I'm going to be like sweating all the way through spring game, just hoping that we have as good a luck as any other year of not letting the people we have grown here leave. Because yes, we do have younger talent. Yes, there are players that like, usually when you look at a record like this, you're like, I don't care, let them all go. But that's just not where we're at. Like, there are definitely dudes here that you have grown this program around. It feels like we should be so much better than a 4-win team who have beat almost nobody, but we're not. This is what we're living in. This is the season that we have.
Yeah, obviously tough year, and I think it's just a tough pill to swallow. Obviously, with it being year 6 rather than year 1, and obviously year 1 was tough, but I think fans can digest and kind of be able to, obviously natural instinct, but be able to look ahead a little bit easier following a year 1 2-10 season versus potentially 4-8, maybe even 5-7 year 6 result.
Yeah, and Rutgers has always been that kind of like, that's not a rivalry in any way, shape, or form, like, but it is our defended rivalry game now. Like, we're promised this game with them every year, and we have, for the most part, taken care of business, especially on the road. We have only lost at home, which is just such a Terps thing to do. And we can continue that here. And we've had lots of blowouts, and their victories have been squeakers. This is the worst loss that Mike Loxley's had to Rutgers. And we'll always be compared to them, not only because of the protective rivalry, not only because of location, but also because we came into the Big Ten together. So you should have the same amount of runway, the same amount of, status to become a Big Ten team. And this is like, we can't be behind Rutgers.
That's fair. And Shiano, I know obviously 1 year difference, but Shiano came in the year after Loxley did. So kind of at least now, even, from, even with those teams coming in together, I think you can kind of look at these 10 years and, they're some parallels, compare and contrast a little bit.
And there's been plenty of seasons Rutgers would have wished to be us. They had a 5-win bowl season that they went to, but for the most part, they have not, had a great record. So, it's just, this is the way of college football. There aren't very many games. The seasons are short. So you mess up a few times and you're going to hear things. You're going to be worried about your job. You're going to have things going on. So we can't just keep doing it. And it's just really depressing. And Iowa's going to be no easier, in fact, much harder of a team to play. I feel terrible for these seniors who have brought a lot to this, team. It's been, Ruben's been like my number 1 guy since he signed with, or even committed to the class. I've always been a huge fan of his. So to see him go out like this is pretty painful, especially if it ends up being 6 losses in a row to end the season.
Yeah, I mean, Ty Felton, Dante Trader,
Yep.
a lot of these guys, Glenn Miller, who's a guy who's I think been a really good success story. Yeah, definitely a lot of guys that really helped shape the foundation of this program and bought in. I mean, a lot of these
Yeah.
guys, Ruben Hippolyte, he bought into to kind of Loxley's vision. His official visit again, if you remember that Nebraska game, Loxley's first year, I believe the final score is 52-7. Nebraska had offered the week or 2 weeks prior. Said it before, say it again. Ruben Hippolyte never wavered, and I've always kind of viewed his buy-in into the program. Unfortunately, stronger than probably 95% of the Maryland fan base since he was in high school.
Yeah. Well, that is unfortunate. The fan base really stuck me right in the heart there at the end. I wasn't sure where we were headed, but yeah, true. I was like 95% of the locker room. That's rough. Oh, fan base. Yeah, that's accurate and hurtful.
Yeah, but it's true though. I mean, he was, he had some, Penn State was after him too. Miami, it was expressing some interest as well. So I mean, he was just, he was a key piece in that first full class for Loxley. So I think again, obviously it's tough year for him. Obviously with his 5th year coming back and finishing it the way it did, and obviously tough year for him on the field as well. But again, just like you said, just feel for these seniors that they deserve better, and be interested to see what the fan turnout is for this.
Because we do have a very strange fan base that is what have you done for me lately constantly. But like you said, those guys have all kind of bought into this Maryland world. The One Speed podcast that they brought out was like more Maryland hype even off the field, like just different level of commitment than we've seen in the past. And they brought us some good memories. We got 3 bowl wins out of these guys, and we went and saw some cool games. I traveled the country with them, and they gave me exciting moments against the biggest teams. Went out there, saw us win most of a game versus Michigan. Like it's just these. Yeah. We'll be there. We'll have our 12 in Section 7. But yeah, I don't expect a good turnout at all. You're talking about a November game, a noon game, a chilly game. Not that really matters at noon. It got pretty cold there by the end of that Rutgers game, though.
Yeah, 6 p.m. kickoff at that weird kick, but getting to that fourth quarter with it 9 o'clock or so, that's understandable. But yeah, no, I think this weekend, obviously you mentioned, with it being a little bit tough of an Iowa team, they're coming off their bye week, already bowl eligible. But coming off this,
we've played everyone off their bye week because this schedule we just got. I think was the 4th team that's coming off their bye week for us.
Yeah,
what are we doing?
I think maybe the last 2 opponents or a couple last couple coming off the bye. But yeah, no, obviously with Iowa, chance to redeem that 20-17 loss in LA at UCLA that ended their 2-game win streak. But a couple notes for this weekend. Brendan Sullivan, their starting quarterback for the last 2 games, he was ruled out for the rest of the year. So it looks like Cade McNamara, he's battling back from concussion. It looks like he'll be back under center. But kind of similar to Rutgers, the Hawkeyes statistically this year haven't done a great job of throwing the ball. They do their damage on the ground, and similar to Rutgers, where they have Kyle Monungai, the Hawkeyes have Caleb Johnson, who statistically has been better than Monungai. He currently leads the Big Ten in rushing yards per game, touchdowns. I believe he's second in yards per attempt to TreVeyon Henderson. So again, I think for this Maryland team, teams have made it pretty clear that they're going to attack Maryland through the air. And if Iowa needs to, they'll be able to kind of lean on the ground game behind an efficient running back. Obviously, with it being maybe the Brian Ferentz reunion game, maybe Maryland has some trick up their sleeve to kind of figure it out. But it's going to be a tough test. I think that Rutgers team, again, they did a really good job kind of winning the trenches, especially in their O-line against Maryland's D-line, I thought, for a 16-minute stretch. So this Hawkeye O-line is no different. Traditional Iowa team, and they've been better on offense than they have a season ago. So I think Maryland will that defense will have its hands full.
Yeah, well, I mean, great news. We've always done so well against Iowa to start with, and now their offense is actually playing well. Demas was actually in the building for the Rutgers game. They announced Demas and Deshaun Jones at one of the commercial breaks. came a week early. I don't know if he'll still be there for Iowa to see that too, or if that's just bad juju being in that building. But
Yeah, first game since his injuries. It's a weird one. It's weird that it's been that long since I guess that game. But yeah, it was good to see him and Jay Sean back in CQ this past weekend.
yeah, I have no good feelings for Iowa. I have no good feelings for Penn State. I have no good feelings anymore. I just really a time machine. I just want to like flash forward to the spring game and see all the devastation so that I can get back my head straight and start thinking about the next season. Because
Yeah,
until then, you're just living in that fear world of the crappy Maryland fan base that everything's going to go wrong that can go wrong, and that all the players that I have fallen in love with this year may not be here. So,
yeah.
of course, I don't, not predicting any of these things, but just it's the feelings.
Yeah, definitely going to be a pivotal off season for Locks and Company, and
It
coaching
feels like
staff,
that's what the
roster
rest of the
wise.
season
So.
is. It feels like the rest of the season is coach is like recruiting your own guys to stay. Like that's because at this point, this season is pretty much washed. Like where there's a very low likelihood you're beating Iowa and Penn State to go to a bowl game. So yeah, let your seniors do their thing next week and treat Penn State like a bowl game and play all your young guys. I don't know. I don't know
Yeah,
what to do.
I mean, yeah, I think, yeah, Locks, again, yeah, I think it'll just be pivotal off season. A lot of these guys, figuring out whether stay or go, and sense from players to staff as well. So, going to be a busy few weeks for sure.
And I don't get into the Locks trash talking, but I'm going to have to bring this up. I text you in the moment, and I've looked back, and I don't feel any different. I literally looked at Fred when there was like 2 minutes left, and I'm like, all right, Rutgers looks like they're going to score here, but like as long as we get the ball back, I feel much better about us scoring in a 2-minute offense because it usually frees up Billy. We usually play better when they're not thinking so much. And then we got in this, it would end up only being like a minute 6, so it was a little bit more rushed. But it was the worst 2-minute offense I've ever seen. Not a single play stopped the clock at the end of it. We had 2 QB runs. We had like 5-yard, slants on, first and 10s. Like nothing made sense. Not one call did it look like we knew what we were doing for that entire drive. We got Billy crushed and taken out with injury. Then the very first MJ Morris play, he gets crushed and taken out with injury. We put Billy back in. I honestly thought we were down to QB3. I did not think Billy was going to be back available. I thought we had 3 QBs and 3 plays, but ended up being Billy walked back out there. It was the worst play calling I've ever seen from the Terps, including bubble screen Randy Edsall.
Yeah, it was definitely just completely not executed like at all. And again, the Ty Felton, where he had a chance to really just kind of get the first down there. I mean, again, I thought, and it's not the first time, Maryland at the end of half, offensively and defensively, they've had their lapses. But again, I think Loxley kind of talked about it post game, that they wanted to be able to get the yardage on that last play and be able to at least get the clock stopped, and then clocked, get them within field goal range. But again, I think that was kind of a perfect fitting ending for that drive.
Yeah, it felt like the season. That 1-minute drive felt like the season.
Yeah, it was again just really felt like all 3 phases was just poorly executed and kind of disappointing that repeated performances like these this year.
Well, you got a prediction for Iowa coming up?
Yeah, I'm gonna go 31-7 Iowa. I'm not optimistic at all.
Yeah. I mean, that feels pretty right. I'll go 13. I'll give us a touchdown. One of our seniors gets in there. Whether it's Prather or Ty Felton, I'm not sure who gets in there, but somebody will get their touchdown to go out semi on top. But the team, I can't see doing it. I hope I'm wrong, but yeah, I'll give us 13-28. Go with that loss for the Iowa squad. I've been wrong every week, I think. So hopefully we can get a win.
Yeah, well, I don't think we've been too hot this year, so it's a good thing we're not keeping track.
Really bad. Let's talk about another loss that's less bad then. How about Friday night against Marquette? Of course, we had, it is an L. We can't, but the basketball team's almost in a spot where moral victories are okay. It's like a whole new lineup of guys, a lot of young players out there, including Derek Queen, who as a freshman already looks better than our senior center, Julian Reese. I still have good feelings about that basketball squad. Even losing to Marquette, I think Marquette could very well be a top 15 squad. And so that puts us around 20 to 25 right now, looking at that game. And I'm okay with being that with as young as this team is.
Yeah, I felt like, I kind of posted about it, post game in our forum, but it feels like this is a type of game, type of performance that, this team is going to be better off of December, January, February. I do think this Marquette team is really good. Obviously, Maryland did they had no answer for Cam Jones. He's a stud, finished with a game high 28 points. Marquette did a really good job just switching, and Maryland couldn't get over this defense, that switch, and Marquette made him pay the last 10, 12 minutes of the game there consistently. And I think kind of the issue for Maryland is obviously, like you said, getting Julian Reese a little bit more comfortable. But I think it's, defensively, I think he looks fine. I thought defensively, I'm not too concerned about, how he and Queen are kind of meshing. Thought both of them individually and kind of protecting the glass. I thought Maryland's done a good job of that. I thought obviously against a Marquette team, they haven't really been challenged against a big team like that. So Marquette, that was kind of a matchup where there was a little bit more favorable for him. But just kind of getting Queen just involved a little more on the offensive side. Woodlard's kind of talked about it at times this year, but just kind of getting the ball, feeding Reese the ball in the post, I think has kind of been a point of emphasis at times for Maryland. But it feels like if it's not forced, then he kind of just is not in the mix at all. And, Derek Queen, for starters, he's kind of been able to, fill that void. But I think kind of when you get to Big Ten play, Maryland's going to have to be able to figure out how to get these guys to, be able to play with each other. Because again, I think, well, Queen hasn't been able to really hit he's taken a couple 3-point attempts. You can all see, I mean, his stroke is pretty smooth. I mean, he feels like he can kind of be able to extend the floor a little bit, whereas Reese can kind of dominate the paint offensively. So I think getting them kind of meshed out and kind of gelled together is kind of that big thing between now and Jan 1.
Yeah, I mean, it looks defensively, he seems more under control. The foul problems for Julian seem a little bit less in this year than have been in the past. Not as much fight with refs that I think really caused a problem the last couple of years for him. Maybe we can get on the good side of some Big Ten officials because they seem to hate him the last couple of years. So hopefully that helps him stay on the floor longer. But like you said, him not being in the mix seems to have like this frustration or pressure tolerance, like that missed dunk where it's like just a wide open like lob over the defender's head and where he spiked it into the sky. It just felt like that was more than necessary. Like just get the ball in the hoop, play basketball, live for another day, and don't showboat on what would have been your first points of the game, but you spiked it to the ceiling.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair, and again, just kind of getting him going. And then again, I think offensively, free throw wise, I think his stroke looks a little bit smoother. But I think just getting that situated. But the other thing that's like obviously it's been clear through a couple of games now. But I think Jacoby Gillespie, he looks real comfortable running the show there. Kind of feels
he got
like
into a pattern, pulling up and shooting from deep.
Yeah.
there at one point during the game. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I like this.
And it just feels like he just looks kind of comfortable doing everything, whether it's kind of getting guys involved, getting the bigs involved, and then obviously he's a good both shot creator and kind of can stretch the floor a little bit with his 3-point shooting as evidence. And him and Rodney Rice, I think have kind of both done a good job. Just kind of feels like Selton Miguel, obviously DHS is figuring it out, had the 2 missed free throws there to kind of seal the loss there at the end. But
yeah, poor kid. Like he was beating himself to death. That's like, of course, in that moment it feels like it's on you, but there were 1,000 times we could have got those 2 points. Like,
yeah,
it sucks for that being this kind of first game winning pressure moment to be standing by yourself on the line.
Yeah.
It just frustrating.
Especially after tough freshman year season. I think that was a chance to kind of really turned the tide. And I saw him post game with his family. So chance to kind of get back, and obviously they're back in action on Tuesday night. So just build confidence, and they'll face Villanova, and then kind of go through that cupcake stretch before Big Ten play kicks back up. So. But again, I think just kind of feels like about half the key contributors right now, Rice, Gillespie, Queen, and half of Julian Reese. Feels like those guys are kind of all on point right now. I'll be curious to see how Selton Miguel, how he kind of fits. Like it feels like he's just figuring out how he fits offensively, how he can kind of gel, how he gets his shots, where his offense comes from. So feels like there's good, but you can kind of see the potential for great.
Yeah, I definitely think that this team has a much higher ceiling than last year's team, at least, and maybe a few years back going now. And like I said, they're young, they're growing together, they're new pieces, and if you lose like in that fashion to the number 15 team in the country, it's not that big a deal. We'll have plenty of more options going forward. The Big Ten's where it really matters anyway. We haven't gotten there yet. Like we said, we still have to prove that these big guys can play in that style of basketball when it does come. But I got some good feelings left for that program. Women are taking care of business as usual. Got a win over Duke that wasn't, on paper their game to have. So it's good to go down to treat a Blue Devil wrong. That's always a positive thing in the Terps country.
Yeah, and they got a chance to move up to 11th nationally in the country. So after beating Towson yesterday as well, so or on Sunday. So
The only local team to win this weekend, like at all.
Yeah,
and of course it was against Towson, so maybe that was the key. You had to play a local squad because some local team had to win.
Yeah, no, it's carrying the water for everyone else.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah, but yeah, I think also just on last thing on the men's side, I think the only thing that's hurts about that Marquette loss is that out of conference slate, your that resume that does matter, and obviously you're going against the Villanova team on Sunday, and Villanova is not looking great. Who knows what the strength of that game looks like in February, March? I mean, they're already 2-3, pair of losses at home, coming off that loss to Virginia. And then you have Syracuse, and I believe it's December 21st. So the chances to stack those resume wins aren't there. But again, you can get those in Big Ten play. Obviously, get a chance to play Purdue, get a chance to play Indiana. So they're there to be had. But the out of conference slate is not there. I think. But I also think in the end, this will be a tournament team. So how much does that matter? We'll see. But that's the only part that stings. But I think the women, obviously the men will be able to there's postseason aspirations, reason to be confident, reason to be optimistic. They'll be back in action on Tuesday night, and like we said, the women they're cruising right now.
Yeah, I mean, it is strange that that was one of the bigger complaints about the Mark Turgeon era was the out of conference schedule, and we had a little bit better out of conference last year, but maybe it's a blip on the radar that those pre-existed Willard coming over. But it's definitely something that still needs work between our AD and Kevin Willard. The out of conference schedule is not where Maryland fans would appreciate having it. It's always good to have the big names in that stadium because if they don't, it looks like a high school gymnasium because it holds 70,000 people and only 5,000 show up. So doesn't really work if you don't put big names in that stadium.
Yeah, and doesn't. Yeah, so yeah, I was gonna say it doesn't help when you lose two revenue sports in the 48-hour stretch, but
no, it definitely doesn't.
I think we addressed that in the first 40 minutes, so we'll close it out on the good note with the women's win.
Yeah, the women's won beat Towson. Congratulations, Maryland. Raise the banner. Again, guys, next week, Iowa, noon. I can't give any more of my life than necessary to this squad, so I will not be tailgating in November for a noon kickoff, but I will be at the game. I will be in Section 7. I will be paying my respects to all the senior class. These guys put in a lot of work for us. This year has not gone how they would like it. Of course, all of them hold their own piece of blame, but they can't win it for you. They're not. We lost an entire offensive line, and none of us understood how hard that was going to hurt. We do now. So hopefully that never happens again where 5 people leave all at the same time, and we can never do this again. But come pay your respects to the guys that have bled their all, that brought this team back to relevance, that got you engaged enough for you to feel hurt right now. Because before this class showed up, you didn't give a shit. Be honest with yourself. These guys built the fact that you are able to be disappointed in the Terps today. Like, this was what the team was. 4 wins is what we had came to expect with our carousel of shitty coaches since we fired Ralph Friedgen for absolutely no reason. So just come out, pay respect to these guys, enjoy one last football game because it's going to be a long damn time till spring game. Till next time, here's to wishing all is well under the show.